Hello, everybody. How are you? Sorry about that. I totally forgot. The one thing I forgot, I think, is that I needed to restart Voicemeeter. So, yes, thank you, Jonathan. I hope that you can hear me now. No actual broken things, just the fact that I'd forgotten to restart Voicemeter. It's already open. It always stays open on my computer. And most of the time I'm using it just because I'm listening to things like YouTube videos or other people's streams and things like that. But here we are. One of those amusing things that happen. So what I was saying that I was looking so animated about and waving my hands and pointing down there in the corner of my overlay is I've been invited to join the reading team of Codex, who are a bunch of people who read public domain books on Twitch. And some of them, like me, also put their readings over on YouTube. And I think there may be some other places, I'm not sure. As far as I know, a lot of them also do things like play games. I think somebody does some coding, just chatting, all sorts of things. But as far as I know, I think I'm the only one who just reads children's books. So there you go. But it was really a real buzz to actually be invited. And thank you, yes. It is fantastic news. It's great to actually find some other people who do something that I do, aside from just fiddling around with their overlays and their panels and all that sort of tech stuff. I've found some other communities that I feel very much part of with the tech side of streaming, but on a really, really, really basic level, more the graphics side of it, which has been really encouraging for me and helped me to improve some of the things. No, I have not yet modified my overlay, apart from just sticking that picture, which is covering over half my chat at the moment, which I totally forgot that it was going to be quite that dominant. But I will eventually be actually redoing the whole of the surround outside of my camera view. So it's a little bit more like where I am is reading the story, and the extra space, this is obviously not for you people on YouTube who are missing out. So come on over to Twitch and watch us live and then you'll see it, or even the video on demand. But the camera view is the real world, and then all of the rest of the outside of that is meant to be sort of like imagination pictures, but kind of nighttime dream sort of scene. And it's been percolating in my mind for a while. I will eventually actually put it all together and use it, put it all together in such a way that I can use it as my overlay, because I like having an overlay. It means that I can have the Twitch chat off the camera picture over here, and then when it comes time to actually put my videos over onto YouTube, I can actually just trim all of the excess stuff out without losing the actual this part of it, the story part, which is where I'm telling the story, and because a lot of people, when they're listening to a story on YouTube, actually don't really want the extra bits. They want to see whatever's in the camera a little bit bigger. I don't know, that's just the way they are. Fussy people. Anyway, you'll see it when it eventually happens. It's taking a little bit. I'm having to learn a lot of graphics skills. I'm not good at this. Thankfully, because my daughter has a Creative Cloud subscription, and I technically kind of work for her for some things. I can use that as part of her setup to be able to do a few things. I do some stuff on there for her occasionally. Anyway, so that's my cool news, and I totally forgot. I could have actually put my Codex logo over there in my bottom right corner on Monday, and I forgot. Anyway, getting there. So the Codex are this group of people who read public domain books online, live. Some people get more involved with chatting as well. Other ones get on with reading. There's all sorts, absolutely all sorts over there. I would host some of them, except that often the books that are being read don't really fit the audience, my target audience. And when I say target, I don't mean that I'm excluding people who are adults who don't have any worries about language or violence or anything like that. want everybody to be able to be here and listening, but I also want grandparents who sit with their grandchildren to watch a TV program or to read a book to them to actually be able to sit in front of their computer and listen to a story and not feel scared of the computer and the internet because they're worried that their grandchildren are going to learn all sorts of naughty things or be corrupted. So that's why I have been trying to curate my channel so that we are reading books that, they might need a little bit of explanation every now and then. Sometimes the attitudes that people display aren't the best, but we're not going to get in trouble for leading someone's grandchildren astray, or the parents are going to be telling their parents, the grandparents, oh, you shouldn't have been doing that with my daughter or son, because sometimes people can be a bit like that. Anyway, so we'll get there. So I'm keeping this as a family-friendly place. I've always intended to do that just because there's not a lot of that actually happens on Twitch, where there's stuff that's specifically family-friendly, especially for younger families, kids. I am a bit concerned sometimes with the fact that I know that they run ads at the beginning for me. It's just one of those things. I'm not sure what sort of ads they actually show you. And the reason why I'm concerned about it sometimes is I know what ads they show me. And I don't really know if everybody's grandkids are going to be, well, the grandparents actually, they might be the ones that freak out a bit more. So do let me know, even if it's through talking to me on Twitch, because when I'm offline when I'm offline from Twitch, it won't show me the chat that you have put into the chat box on Twitch when I come back. So if you want to send me a message because you're concerned about something, either join us on Discord, on the Discord server, and there's a link down below in my About section, or find me on Twitter. You can send me a message on Twitter. You can comment on one of my videos over on YouTube. Although if it's something that you're a bit concerned about, that might be a little bit too public. I don't know. Anyway, so find a way of letting me know. Just let me know what sort of ads that Twitch are actually showing you on my channel when you come here to see. Because I really am intrigued, because I've specifically tagged it as being not for 18 plus or anything like that. And some of the game advertisements are a little bit hair-raising if you actually think about the age group of the sort of people that we have here. I mean, I know supposedly Twitch is for people who are 13 plus and it's meant to be okay for them. Yeah, but when you've got grandparents and grandkids and all that sort of stuff together, I think they should be allowed to join in too. So anyway, we'll see. We'll get there. Right. What I'm trying to do here is read a story, isn't it? Isn't that why you came here? I hope so. Anyway, so I better introduce myself if you're new here. I know that there might just possibly be some new people here. I better actually let you know who I am and what I do. I'm just going to, once again, remember late to check that the volume is turned off on my headset, because I have been doing some video stuff, and the volume on my phone, and then I'll get on with my intro for the people who are new. Oh, just as well I checked it. The volume was up. Right, that is down now. I can plug my phone in, and I can see myself on Twitch on my phone. That's one way of keeping an eye on what's going on. Although it doesn't show me the ads. Just one of those things. Anyway. Twitch. Nearly there. There's the red dot that says I'm online. And then I tap on my face again and it shows me, yes, I'm here. And if I hold this up here long enough, technically we're going to get a little bit of one of those, recursive things, like an infinity mirror or whatever. Right. My subtitles are working. My microphone is working. My lights are working. I have got my brighter one that normally doesn't help if I've got a headache turned away a little bit, so I've got one side slightly more shaped. That's good. We're getting there. We're improving. Yes, I've got a very washed out background at the moment, but that's because I didn't want to have really bright lights on my face still. Good question, Jonathan. Here we go. Here's the bit for all the new people. Hi, if you're new here, I'm Jev. I read old-fashioned children's stories. They actually are old children's stories. Well, children's stories that are old books, not necessarily for old children. And I have 3 tips for you. The first one is, do you have your water ready? At least water. You need to have a drink handy just to keep your brain ticking. Water is brilliant for that. Do you have your snacks? I have a mandarin, and somewhere, mandarin, isn't it nice? My, rattle, rattle, rattle. Put your fingers in your ears for a minute. Just while I get them out of the packet. My green screen is not turning the mandarin into a bit of the background. And I have a few hundreds and thousands cookies, biscuits, because we're in New Zealand, a few hundreds and thousands biscuits for my snacks today. They look like this. Hundreds and thousands on a biscuit, just a thin little one. I think they make them out of round wines or vanilla wines. I don't think they're super wines. What do you think? Are hundreds and thousands biscuits made out of round wines, vanilla wines, or super wines? If you're a Kiwi, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. Have a think about it. Go and get some from the supermarket next time you're at the supermarket, and check out for yourself and see what you come up to as your conclusion. What is the basis of hundreds and thousands biscuits? Go on. Anyway, so we've got tip 1 is have something to drink, especially water. Tip 2 is make sure you've got a snack. And tip 3 is, and here's where I do a dive over to the floor over next to me, remember? To get the cushion. Somewhere comfortable to sit. Unless, of course, you're working, and I'm really, really sorry about that. But if I can keep your mind occupied while you're actually doing some other work, that's good. And my sympathies for having to work or study or whatever it is that you have to do. Anyway, so we're all set, I think. I've explained who I am, I've explained what I do, and I've given you my 3 tips. You're most welcome to chat with everybody in the chat box that's over there. This is once again assuming that you're not on YouTube, but you're actually watching while I'm reading live. I will do most of my talking at the beginning and the end of the session, and also between chapters. But if I have a question about something and you think that you can answer that for me, or if you have a life experience or something like that that you think is specifically relevant for the story that we're currently reading, please type it in the chat box. And if it catches my attention soon enough, I will read it out so that people who are listening, including those on YouTube, can actually hear about this little bit of extra information, because I don't know everything. Contrary to my children's belief when they were growing up, I don't actually know everything. So there are words where I will say them differently to how other people say them, apart from just the fact that it's my Kiwi accent, because a lot of words I learnt from reading them. And my mum and I used to have a great laugh, because one of us would be reading something out loud and discover that the other learnt the word slightly differently, because when they were reading, they had interpreted the sounds in the word differently. And both of us were probably quite wrong compared with how most people said the word, but that's okay. It was lots of fun. And also word definitions. Sometimes there'll be, most of the words that we come across I do know, and if I think that you as a listener may not know them, because I'm aware I have a very long experience of reading and life. I mean, it kind of goes with the grey hair. I've lived a lot of different places. I've lived in Canada, Australia, England. I've lived on a boat. I've lived in a van, all sorts of things like that. So because of that, I have a lot of small experiences and big experiences which help to understand the context of a lot of things in old stories. I grew up I grew up next to one set of grandparents, and then a bit later on next door to my other grandparents, and they were still living very, very, very old-fashioned lives. Have you ever lived in a small cottage that instead of having a flush toilet has a bucket toilet? I have, on more than one occasion. So, life experience for me has been quite a lot different to everybody else's. And when you're growing up, you think that your experiences, except for when you're in the playground and people are laughing at you, other than that, you actually feel that your life experiences are normal. It's just the way our heads work. And so because of that, at the time, you don't actually necessarily get into discussion about stuff or learn things about that sort of thing from other people. But as an adult, and especially when you're reading books, you start to realise that not everybody understands these things, that it used to be like this for people. Like the fact that in this background this background, I'm moving back so I can move over a little bit. Yes, my green screen has it's actually just a piece of material that's hung over a bar, and it overlaps. So in this space here, this is the road. This road is made out of clay. It's just been graded. It's just been dug and smoothed out, and it had gone over with a roller. And then they would have put some stones on it. But it's not actually a sealed road. This is a clay road, or a loose metal road, is what we would call it in New Zealand. Which is why it has puddles very easily after the rain in it. It also doesn't have a curb. And the houses here, behind me, have their front fence or hedge with a gate that comes straight out onto the road. And over here, we have the hedge that's alongside the fields behind the hedge, and this here's the ditch. And there's grass that grows right up to the edge of the road, because that grass there, the edge of the grass is trimmed by car tyres or horses and cart wheels going alongside and running over the grass. And so the grass doesn't actually grow out onto the road surface. Now, for most people, even my age, that was not normal. But I lived out in the country, and so this sort of setup was quite normal. So there's a lot of things like that, just little details that are quite normal for me. And I delighted when I was growing up, and I was reading books, I delighted in the different things that were talked about that I understood and I related to, even though other people didn't. And so these days I read the same sort of books because other people are missing these experiences. And the more we experience from outside of our own world, the more we experience from outside of our own lives, the easier it is for us to understand how other people think and live and function, to be more sympathetic, to actually have understanding for other people. And I actually think that that's one of the things that for a lot of people in this day and age is missing, is we've lost our ability to accept that other people do things differently to us, to sympathise with the situations that they have going on in their lives, because we just don't relate to them as actually real people that could be standing next to us, who could be living over the fence from us. And fiction, especially fiction that's written outside of our own time and place, actually is a great way to broaden our understanding. So let's stop chatting. We've been doing it long enough and get on with reading. So here we go. Yes, I say that word so too many times, don't I? Oh, sorry about that. Right, here we go. Yes, we're going to. Right, hi, I'm Jev. I'm reading William Again by Richmal, Crompton, and we are reading chapter 13. Or is it chapter 14? I'm just going to check this. I'm not quite sure if I've actually got that right. Chapter 13 I thought was the last one we read. Sorry, stay there. Please hold, caller. No, I did not work in a call centre, but my daughter has, and I have worked as a kind of a temporary receptionist where you had to do a lot of phone stuff. It was just because I was the youngest and most phone competent person in the office, of the drawing office where I worked. So when the others who worked on the front office, answering the phones and all that sort of thing, had to go and do things, I was the one who had to answer the phones for them. Do all the filtering jobs. Filtering being making sure that people didn't get through to someone on the phone when the boss had said they weren't taking calls. You wouldn't believe how often people actually would get through on a call to someone when they shouldn't have. It's amazing. You know, when the boss says, no, I'm sorry, I'm not taking any calls. When you're the receptionist and someone phones up and they're very insistent about it, you don't put that phone call through because the boss has said no. As far as you know, they might be in their office with a migraine trying not to die or something like that. Or there might be someone trying to phone them that isn't meant to be talking to them for some legal purposes or whatever. You never know. And so it's not your job as a receptionist, as a telephonist or whatever, to pass that call on. And it was one of the things that apparently I was very good at, but a lot of the others who worked out the front weren't quite so good. Anyway, all of that sort of odd stuff. And I don't need any more of that at the moment. What am I doing? I'm checking over on my other monitor, seeing if there's things I'm meant to be dealing with as I start to read. Yes, I do get a little distracted at times. Here we go. We are reading William Again by Richmal Crompton, and I was right. That was the wrong chapter. We're meant to be reading chapter 14, which is our last chapter of this book. It's about the same length as all of our other ones. Right, here we go. And I think I've said that 3 or 4 times now, haven't I? I'm going to type now. See if my new command works. There you go. Hi, it's my welcome command. It's meant to show up in the thing, and I don't think it has yet, but it should do very shortly. I hope. It's one of the things I've been busy on. Here we go. Chapter 14, William Gets Wrecked. That's a strange one. I'm not quite sure what that's about. Right. William laid aside his Robinson Crusoe with a sigh. His dreams of pirate king and robber chief vanished. Because those are things that he's often commented on wanting to do or be. Let's see if this one works. It's typing the commands into the Twitch chat, but it's not giving you the information. Oh dear, I'm going to have to do some troubleshooting after this, aren't I? Anyway, the desire of his heart now was to be shipwrecked on a desert island. He surveyed his garden, and the next garden, and the fields beyond it, with an impatient scowl. He felt bitterly that it was just his luck to live in an overpopulated world with ready-made houses and where everything one could possibly need could be purchased at the shop around the corner. Yet he felt that within reach there must be a desert island, or at any rate some spot which a very little imagination could transform into a desert island. He decided to set out on a voyage. He filled his pockets with biscuits and pieces of... turn page, please. And pieces of string. Of course, he's an 11-year-old boy and living in the country village. He will have pockets that are full of stones and half-chewed bits of this, that and everything else, and sticks and toy soldiers and string and other things like biscuits. String was always useful, he said. He went into the morning room where his mother and grown-up sister sat. He felt strongly that a mariner just about to be shipwrecked ought to bid a fond farewell to his family. "Goodbye," he said in a deep voice, "case I'm not back." "I wish you'd remember to wipe your boots when you come into the house," said his mother patiently. "You'd better be back if you want any tea," said Ethel, his older sister. William felt that they lacked every quality that the family of a shipwrecked mariner should possess. Not for the first time, he washed his hands of them in disgust. All right, he said, don't blame me if you're sorry when it's too late. With this cryptic remark, he left. To a casual observer, William looked only a small boy, walking slowly down a road, frowning with his hands in his pockets. He was really an intrepid mariner sailing across uncharted sea. A chart is a map of where the land is and where the sea is. It's like a street map or a road map, except it's for the sea. So it will have the depth of the water in some places where the water is shallow enough that you can drop your anchor, but also it will show where important rocks are, where there are lighthouses and things like that. That's a chart, and they're specially made for people who are on the sea. So uncharted means an area where no one has been and done the surveying that's needed to be able to show where the rocks are, if there are lighthouses, where there's a beach, and those sort of things. So that's what the meaning of uncharted means. The meaning of it means, yes, very good English. To a casual observer, William looked only a small boy walking slowly down a road, frowning with his hands in his pockets. He was really an intrepid mariner sailing across an uncharted sea. Hello, William. William had a weak spot in his heart for Joan. He rather liked her dimples and dark curls. In his softer moments, he had contemplated Joan actually reigning by his side as Pirate Queen. Oh, for an 11-year-old boy, that's an adventurous thought. Because at 11, often boys are totally trying to avoid girls. Just speaking from experience. And I'm trying to find where the next picture is to get ready for it. Yeah, I'm not doing well with that one today either. William had a weak spot in his heart for Joan. He rather liked her dimples and dark curls. In his softer moments, he had contemplated Joan actually reigning by his side as Pirate Queen or Robber Chieftainess. Now he felt that her presence might enliven a somewhat lonely voyage. I'm an explorer, he said, sailing along and looking for new lands. Oh, William, Joan pleaded, may I come with you? He considered the matter with a judicial frown. All right, he said at last. Will you come in my ship or will you have a ship of your own? I'd rather come in your ship, please. Oh, all right, he said. Well, you're in my ship. Come on. In other words, because it's totally imagination, it makes a lot more sense to just sort of say, yep, you're already in the ship. Let's carry on. Yes, I am looking once again at my other monitor. Just trying to catch up with where the next picture is. Right, carrying on. Getting there. Yes, William. No, I missed the wrong bit. I'd rather come in your ship, please. All right, he said. Well, you're in my ship. Come on. She walked along by his side. The best part of Joan was that she asked very few questions. We're probably going to come to a deserted island soon, said William. I expect we shall come to a desert island soon if we got through these icebergs all right. There's a pretty awful wind blowing, and there isn't there, lashing the sails and tacking and all that, and no land in sight, and all these whales and all things all about. Yes, William, said Joan obediently. You'd better be chief mate, William advised. I'll be skipper. You don't see any land in sight, do you, mate? Joan gazed at the road before them, the hedges around them, the cows' heads above the hedge, and the figure of the vicar in the distance. No, skipper, she said. William heaved a sigh of relief. For a minute he had thought she was going to fail him. They proceeded in silence for a time. The mast's gone now, said William, all crashing down on the deck before the terrible hurricane what sweeps all before it. I thought it was going to crash on your brave head, mate. Yes, skipper, said Joan. She was quite satisfactory. She entered into the spirit of a thing and had the additional advantage of not demanding a prominent role. The vicar had come up to them. He looked at William with disapproval. Fine day, young man, he said breezily. Awful, said William gruffly, blowing and hurricaning and lashing at everything. Come on, mate. They left the vicar, staring after them. I don't think the vicar's got much imagination, not in the manner that little boys have. I wonder, he said to the landscape, whether that boy is deficient or merely impudent. Neither, actually. He was still wondering when they vanished from sight. They reached the river. The waves is lashing up at us, said William, surveying the placid stream. I don't think this old boat will stick together much longer if we don't see a bit of land soon. I'm just drenched through, spite of my tarpaulings, and almost perishing of hunger 'cause the provisions was swept overboard. Aren't you, mate? Yes, skipper, said Joan, raising blue eyes alight with admiration. The path now turned inland. This part of the river was private, and the back garden of a large house swept down to the river's bank. I believe, said William, that I see an island. I believe that at last I see an island just as this old boat is going to crash to pieces against a towering rock. There! It's crashed to pieces against a towering rock. My goodness, we're in the icy water now. Well, you catch hold of an old splinter or something, and I'll catch hold of something else, and we'll just make for that old island with all our might and main, spite of the rain and wind lashing at our faces. With set, grim expression, he began to struggle through the garden hedge. Come on, mate, he called, holding the bushes aside for her. Here's the island at last. Now we'll lie down on the sand and sleep, and then I'll go and get the things what will be washed up from the wreck. The part of the garden where they found themselves was out of sight of the house. There was a summer house by the river, and near that a clothesline with a tablecloth hung to dry. They sat down on the bank of the river. Nice to rest, isn't it? Said William, after all that struggling against the fierce wind and rain. Yes, skipper, said Joan. You go on resting, said William kindly, and I'll go and try to find things washed up by the wreck. Sorry, I need a mouthful of water. You take one too. That's better. Carrying on, there was a pause in the story there, so that's okay. In our family, we say ... or we say pause when a book has a section of text, and then they'll have a little bit of a gap, and then they'll have some sort of printer's mark to denote that there's going to be a section change. Usually it's a little bit of time has passed, not so much a scene change. I breathed wrong just then. Don't breathe while you're trying to swallow. It's not good. William crept towards the back of the house. There was no one to be seen. The door stood slightly ajar. Cautiously, William peered within. He saw a comfortable kitchen, empty, save for the presence of a grey cat washing its face, sitting on the hearthrug. It suspended operations for a moment, surveyed William coldly and disapprovingly, and then returned to its ablutions. William's glance fell eagerly on a box of matches on the table and a saucepan in the sink. He waited in the shadow of the doorway. There was no sound in the house. At last, on tiptoe, his brows drawn together, his tongue projecting from his mouth, his eye fixed on the door, his freckled countenance purple and scowling, his hair standing on end, he crept across the room. Returning the cat's haughty stare, he seized the matches, the saucepan, and 2 cups, and fled down to the river where his chief mate was sitting on the grass, idly throwing stones into the water. Have you noticed that if you have to really concentrate hard, sometimes it's easier if you poke your tongue out a bit? My whole family does it. It doesn't appear to be a learned thing. It just seems to be something that we do. Sorry, I'm just moving my monitor so I don't have to sit in the wrong place the wrong way. Anyway, carrying on. So he's returned with matches, a saucepan, and 2 cups. Wonder what the cook's going to think when they come into their kitchen. Then he says, "Look what I've found washed up from the wreck," he said proudly. "Now we'll build a fire, and soon I expect we'll find a native savage and some wild animals. Not "Not too wild, William," said the chief mate. "All right," said the skipper, "not too wild. But anyway, it doesn't matter, 'cause you've got me, and there's nothing much I can't kill. Now, after the night on the open sea, we'd better make breakfast." With indescribable joy, they collected twigs, made a fire, filled the saucepan with water from the river, and put it on to boil. Because in those days, actually, most rivers and streams were actually safe to drink from. They didn't have giardia in most waterways back then. Don't do it now, unless you boil the water for 10 minutes. Anyway, and put the water on to boil. When the water was warm, William poured it into 2 cups and broke his biscuits into them. When the water was smoked and the biscuits grimy from their sojourn in William's pockets. So the water had a smoky flavour from the homemade fire, which was probably not quite as hot running as a lot of other fires that are made in a fireplace or a stove, a wood-burning stove, which then would have... A hot fire doesn't produce as much smoke. But when you're about 11, a smoky fire proves that it's a real fire when you're making it. From experience. Anyway, the water was smoked and the biscuits grimy from their sojourn in William's pockets. But to the shipwrecked mariners, the draught was as of nectar and ambrosia. Both drained their cups. "That was grand, wasn't it, mate? I think you ought to say, 'Aye, aye, sir.'" "Aye, aye, sir," said Joan. "Well now, I'd better build us a house out of logs and things, and you go and see if you can find anything washed up from the wreck." "Oh, Skipper, you won't mind. There's no one there but a cat." With mingled apprehension and excitement, Joan stole off to the house. William, left alone, turned to the summer house and in his imagination made it vanish into thin air. Then he went through a ferocious and strenuous pantomime of cutting down trees and piling up logs, and finally beheld the completed summer house with the proud eye of a creator. Then he opened the door and entered. Ooh, interesting. A ragged, unkempt man rose from the seat, rubbing his eyes. A black bag was on the floor. William and the man stared at each other, neither of them flinching. Sorry, I keep gazing across to see if the picture that is coming is the one I'm meant to be using now, but I'm not sure. Anyway, neither of them flinching. "You're just what I wanted to find," said William at last, with excitement and friendliness in his voice. "I just wanted a native savage." "Oh, you did you?" said the man. "Glad I'll do for you're all right. And who may you be, if I may be so bold as to ask?" "We're shipwrecked," said William. "Shipwrecked on a desert island. I've just built a hut, and my chief mate's going to find things washed up from the wreck, and you'll do for the native savage. Do you mind being called Friday?" "Not at all, young gent," said the man. "Not at all. Herbert Hammond is my name, but call me Friday, Saturday and Sunday, if you've a mind." He ran his eyes speculatively over William. "But it seems funny to see a shipwrecked sailor in clothes like them. You'd have thought they'd have all got tore to pieces in the wreck like." "Yes," said William eagerly, "they did." "One would have expected to see you, well, perhaps dressed in a sail or something." His eye narrowed and he pointed to the ragged tablecloth fluttering in the breeze. "That'd do fine for a sail." William's eyes were alight with enthusiasm. "Yes, it would," he said. "Fine." "If I was you and being shipwrecked," said the man, deftly taking the tablecloth from the line, "I'd nip into that there summer house and take off that ordinary-like suit and rig up myself in this here sail. Then you'd feel like as if you was shipwrecked, eh?" "Where's this one going?" He threw the tablecloth into the summer house, and William, all excitement, followed. Friday lay on the bank by the river, smoked a foul-smelling pipe, and winked at the landscape. Soon William emerged, proudly wearing the tablecloth in the fashion of a Roman toga. "That," said Friday, "looks a bit all right. If I was you, I'd go and show it to the other one what's looking at the wreck. I'll stay and look after that there suit of yours so no one runs off with it. Have we got any idea of where this is going yet? As William's... my stomach is gurgling. I'll be having something to eat in a minute. As William swaggered slowly towards the house, Friday Rose spat into the river, winked at the tree, and went into the summer house again. Joan was sitting on the step of the house with the cat on his knee. "Well, I mean, Skipper," she said, "it's a lovely puss cat." Then, "Oh, goodness, William!" Her tone hovered between horror and admiration. William stepped jauntily up to her. One corner of the tablecloth trailed on the ground behind him. Pardon me. "It's a sail," he said proudly. "I got all my clothes dashed off me in the wreck and I'm wearing a sail what got washed up by the waves. It does jolly well, doesn't it?" Joan clapped her hands. Oh my goodness. Where is this going to go? Just keep in mind that this actually is the last chapter of the book, so it could be a little bit more dramatic than some of the other ones. Oh, yes. Sorry, I'm having fun with this. Oh, and I found a native The thing with... I'm just going to explain something. The thing with the Williams stories is it's not necessarily about, what might happen, so much as, I can see what's going to happen, but let's keep reading and find out how it happens and how it works out in the end. Some stories are like that. Some stories can be quite predictable. It's the same with TV programs and movies. Some things you watch purely for the how it happens, not the what's going to happen. Anyway, we'll carry on. "Oh, and I found a native savage," went on William, "and he doesn't mind being called Friday." "Oh, how lovely," said Joan, "and the puss will do for a native wild animal. Oh, William, we've got simply everything, haven't we?" They went happily down to the river. There William sustained the first shock of that momentous afternoon. Many more were to follow. The native savage had disappeared. Search in the summer house revealed the fact that William's clothes had also disappeared. William's jaw dropped. "Stole 'em!" he proclaimed. Joan's eyes opened wide. The possibilities of the situation were beginning to dawn on both of them. "William, how'll you get home?" William's expression was one of pure horror. "Mean old thing," he said. "Simply stole him." "William, what'll your mother say?" They stared at each other in consternation. William clutched the tablecloth tightly around his neck. At this moment, a loud, angry voice came from the house. They fled precipitately to the summer house. Isolated phrases reached them. "Careless girl," "gossiping in the grocer's shop," "anyone might have come in," "not even locked the door," "heaven knows." Then they heard the violent slamming of the back door. Both felt that the time had come for the adventure to end. The desert island had lost its charm. It must be after tea time. The sun was already setting. In normal circumstances, they would have crept quietly from the garden and returned to their respective homes. But circumstances were not normal. Between William's pants and vest and the world at large was not his usual long-suffering cloth suit, the one that he probably wore for school and everything else. Sorry, just got to keep things working properly over here. Not his normal long-suffering cloth suit, but a trailing and in certain places inadequate tablecloth. William's freckled face, with its expression of indignant horror in its frame of wild, carroty hair, had a curious, unexpected appearance at the top of the long white robe. "Oh, let's go home," said Joan, with a suspicion of tears in her voice. William looked at her desperately. "I can't go home like this," he said, hoarse with emotion. "I can't go through the village wearing a tablecloth. Everybody'd be laughing at me. No one's ever done it before, not walked through the village in a tablecloth. It'd make me ridiculous for the rest of my life." He sat down, staring despondently in front of him. "Oh, William, what will you do?" said Joan. "I'll stay here till midnight, till everyone else is in bed, and I'll go home then. You'd better be getting home now." "Oh, William, I couldn't." "I'll go and get you something from our house. I'll get you some of Daddy's clothes." "Oh, William." William, deeply touched, could only stare at her and mutter gratefully, "Thanks, thanks. He's bigger than me, but they'll do. Anything'll do." He watched her anxiously through the dusty little window of the summer house as she crept to the hole in the hedge and disappeared. Then he heaved a deep sigh, drew his covering around him, sat down on the summer house seat, and waited. He was not left in peace for long. The voice which had first broken in upon their desert island sounded again, this time nearer. It was evidently walking round the garden with a sympathetic friend. "And that wicked girl went to the grocer's and stayed there the whole afternoon. It's that young man they've got there now. It's always the young men, my dear. That's the worst of girls. And she left the house entirely unguarded, my dear. Didn't even lock the door. And I came back, and yes, my dear, all the silver gone from the dining room. Some thief had been in, and, oh yes, I've telephoned the police, and good gracious, the wretch has even taken the tablecloth we had hanging up in the back garden. Did you ever? Have you looked in the summer house? Maybe he's hiding there," said her friend. William grew hot and cold and took up his position immediately behind the door. "No, my dear, and I am not going to. I don't think it's fair to my friends and relations. I'm not thinking of myself. But suppose he were there. He's sure to have a revolver. I'll make a fine target for his revolver, silhouetted against the light." "Yes, but couldn't we get pokers and dash in and stun him before it's time to move?" "Before he has time to move." William pressing himself and his tablecloth tightly into the corner behind the door, was aware of a curious sinking feeling in his middle. Some people, he decided, hadn't any hearts at all. "I don't think so. We might so easily kill him by mistake." "Well then, at any rate, we can lock the door and keep him in there till the police come," said her friend. A cold perspiration broke out over William. "The lock won't work. Don't you know, my dear, I'd rather go further away, just in case there is anyone there. Suppose we go indoors." The voices died away in the distance. The tenseness of William's form relaxed. His fixed look of horror and apprehension faded. He ran his fingers through his hair. "Crumbs!" he whispered. It seemed hours before the door opened and Joan staggered in with a bundle. "Quick, William, darling," she whispered. "Put 'em on and we'll go home. No one saw me getting them. I'm afraid they're a bit big, but we can turn things up." Her fear was justified. Mr. James Clive, her father, was 6'6" in height. That's tall. That's very tall, especially in the time period that we're reading about. That's very, very tall for England at that particular time period. My goodness. 6'6" in height. On William, his coat nearly touched the ground. His trousers, though rolled up bulkily at the ends till they could be rolled up no more, considerably impeded William's progress. "Oh, William, they'll do," she whispered at last. "They're a bit big, but they'll do." William, in Mr. Clive's clothes, would have made his fortune on a music hall stage. Strong men would have wept tears at the sight, with laughter, I think. But Joan's loyalty was such that only affectionate concern was in the glance she turned on him. William's face was set and determined. He thought that the end of his troubles was in sight, as he rolled the tablecloth into a ball and put it beneath his arm. They may have been able to track us if we leave it here," he whispered. "Sides, someone stole my clothes, and I'm jolly well going to steal someone's tablecloth." The curious couple walked down the road. Joan kept throwing little anxious glances at her companion. He certainly looked very queer. She hadn't realised that the suit would be quite so much too big. So far, they had not passed a house. Now they were passing a roadside cottage. Here I have a picture for you. While I carry on reading. A man came out of the cottage and stared at William, open-mouthed. Then he leaned against the wall, put his hands on his sides, and emitted guffaw on guffaw. William merely threw him a murderous glance and proceeded on his way with as much dignity as his trousers allowed him. "Oh, missus," called the man, wiping his eyes, calling to his wife. A woman came out, saw William, gave a piercing scream of mirth, "That's this one here," and leaned helplessly against the wall with the man. 2 small children followed and joined in the shrieks of merriment. Oh dear. That to William seemed to fill the entire world. Joan put her hand on that part of the long sleeve where she judged William's hand might be. I'm just going to find you the next picture. Sorry. It's a little hard to actually get to them now because they're right down the bottom of the thing. There they are. Joan put her hand to that part of the long sleeve where she judged William's hand might be and gave a sympathetic squeeze. Yet even Joan's heart sank at the thought of the journey through the village that lay before them. So here's William, with the trousers rolled up at the bottom, but they're still bunched around him. The sleeves are very obviously hanging down below his hands. See, there's Joan's hand trying to grasp where she thinks his hand is, inside the sleeve. And he's glaring at the people that they're passing, obviously. The next house they had to pass was the house where Joan lived. To her consternation, Joan saw a figure in a black dress and white apron at the gate. Oh dear. I'm going to leave you that picture in your mind. It was too late to turn or flee. "Well, I never, Miss Joan. Your mother says you're to come in at once. She's in a terrible state over you. Where have you been?" "I must go home with William," pleaded Joan. "That you must not," said the housemaid, taking her hand. "Your mother said I was to find you and tell you to come in immediate. You've had no tea or nothing. As for you," she turned a devastatingly scornful eye upon William, "dressing up and thinking you're so funny. Well, you won't get me laughing at you. You ought to be ashamed of yourself." She's a little bit of a tartar, isn't she? With a contemptuous sniff, she led away the reluctant Joan. William continued his pilgrimage alone. He went slowly. He went slowly for 2 reasons. One was that the thought of the journey down the village street filled even William's heart with apprehension. The other was that his trousers were coming unrolled, and his hands were so far up the long sleeves of the coat that he could not extricate them. He was glad that dusk was at last falling. He was aware that a tall figure was approaching from the opposite direction. He shrank into the shadow of the hedge and hoped that it would pass without observing him. It did not. It stood in front of him, barring his way, and slowly adjusted a monocle. Because in those days people did use monocles. With a sinking heart, William looked up into the face of Joan's father. "Excuse me, young man," said the gentleman, "but either you and I patronise the same tailor and have had identical ideas this spring as to style and material, or his hand descended firmly and held the back of William's neck, "or you are wearing a suit of my clothes, in which case I must ask you to come home with me and take them off." He began to impel William gently back towards his house, Joan's house. "If you'd just let me explain," said William pathetically. "Explanations," said Mr. Clive, transferring his hold from William's neck to the collar of his coat, "are tedious, unsatisfactory things. Why trouble yourself with them? I merely ask of you, as one gentleman to another, that you will return to me the garments that you seem to have absent-mindedly appropriated." Even William's spirits were crushed by the repeated blows of fate. He did not speak again till he was face to face with his captor, in the library of Joan's house, but with Joan nowhere to be seen. He was pale and stern. "But I've nothing else to wear," he said. "Nothing. You don't want me to go all the way home and nothing." Sorry, I really need to eat something. It's my indigestion. Time for you to have a drink. "But I've nothing else to wear," he said. "Nothing. You don't want me to go all the way home and nothing." "What," said Mr. Clive, "were you wearing before you purloined my suit?" "I was wearing a tablecloth." "But then I suppose you can go on wearing a tablecloth." But you don't want me to go through the village in a tablecloth," said William in frenzied despair. "You can go through the village in a table napkin for all I care," said Mr. Clive heartlessly. "I paid 12 guineas for this suit only last week, and I'm not going to have it mucked up any more. It'll take about 6 years in a press to take these creases out. Anyway, I don't know what mischievous business you've been engaged in today, but I can guess who got hold of this suit for you, and I'll have a few words with Miss Joan on the subject this evening." William glared at him savagely. "Nothing to do with Joan," he said. "I got it myself." He divested himself of the suit, shook out his tablecloth, and wrapped it around him, scowling darkly. "Well," he said, slowly and bitterly, "if you don't mind me going through the village in this—" "I don't mind at all," said Mr. Clive pleasantly. "Not at all. Allow me to see you to the door. Good night, William." He closed the door and went to the library window. There he watched the white-clad figure disappear down the drive. "That young man's progress through the village," he said aloud, "ought to be worth watching." William set out once more on his adventurous journey. At the thought of the village street, his knees felt quite decidedly unsteady. Never to William had his home seemed so near and yet so unattainable. Suddenly he thought of the path over the fields and through the churchyard. It would bring him out a good way beyond his home, but it would avoid that nightmare of the village street, the main road through the village. William climbed over the stile and set off over the fields. It was nearly dark anyway. He could see no one near. He climbed the second stile that led into the churchyard and began to walk forward. Suddenly, a woman who had been standing with her back to him, reading one of the gravestones, turned, stared at him with open mouth and eyes, gave a scream that made the hair on William's head stand upright, and shot off like an arrow from a bow, falling head over heels over the opposite stile, picking herself up and running with deafening screams in the direction of the village. William, feeling slightly shaken, sat down behind a tombstone to recover. Several people passed, but William's nerve had gone. He dared not emerge from his damp and gloomy refuge. At last he heard the sound of many cheerful voices, as if 7 or 8 people were coming together through the churchyard. His spirits rose. He could tell them his plight. 7 or 8 people all together would not be afraid of him. He rose from behind his tombstone, and with 8 wild yells, 8 young women made for the horizon. All but one. She tripped over a stone and crouched with her head on her hands, where she fell. With a thrill of joy, William recognised his mother's housemaid. His troubles were at an end. She would fetch him his overcoat. "Ellen," he began. "Oh, oh, oh, oh," yelled Ellen. With a shriek more piercing than he had yet heard, Ellen fled from William's sight. "I don't know where William is," said Mrs. Brown to her husband. This is William's mother. "He wasn't in to tea." "Don't worry yourself about him unduly," said her husband. "There was a rumour rife in the village as I came from the station to the effect that William was seen walking in the direction of the village over an hour ago, wearing a suit of clothes of abnormal size." Mrs. Brown sat down suddenly. Abnormal size, but he was wearing his ordinary suit at lunch. "I can't explain it," said her husband and his father. "I merely repeat the rumour." "An hour ago? Then why isn't he home?" "I can't say," said her husband callously, and opened his evening paper. At this point, an unearthly yell broke the silence of the house, and Ellen rushed into the room, flinging herself beneath the table. "It's come after me," she screamed. "It's at the side door. Oh, Law, it's there, all white and all. Oh, don't let it get me. I don't want to die. I'll repent. Oh, Law. Mr. Brown laid down his paper with a sigh. "What is it?" he said wearily. Oh, Law, sobbed Ellen beneath the table. A figure appeared in the doorway. A wild figure, with a fierce, indignant, aggrieved expression, and hair that stood up round its face, a figure that clutched a ragged tablecloth round it with certain enraged dignity. It's William," said Mrs. Brown. And here we have a pause, so I'm going to eat the other part of my biscuit. Right. Just a total aside, I will tell you later if I remember. Anyway, nothing to do with the story, but more to do with streaming. Anyway, here we carry on with the story. So Mrs. Brown recognised William, obviously. "But they stole it off me," said William wildly. "So I gathered from your account," said Mr. Brown politely. "Well, is it fair to expect me to pay for things what was stole off me?" "I have already remarked that if I observed in you any sudden growth of such virtues as cleanliness, tidiness, obedience, silence, modesty, and the rest, I might myself contribute a little towards the waistcoat, say, or the collar and tie. We will now consider the discussion closed." "It's ever so long past your bedtime, William," said Mrs. Brown. "Do go to bed. I simply can't bear to see you wearing that dreadful thing any longer." With a glance of sorrowful anger at his parents. William drew his tablecloth about him and prepared to depart. He felt injured, infuriated, ill-treated, and weary. His self-esteem was cruelly hurt. Screams of laughter came from the next room where his grown-up brother and sister were relating his adventures to a friend. Sorry, I just need to move on this chair because it's a bit... If you sit too long on an office chair, it can get a bit uncomfortable. The telephone bell rang. "William, someone wants to speak to you." He took the receiver unsmilingly. "William, Daddy said I could ring you up to say good night to you." "I was so sorry I couldn't go home with you, William. I don't think you looked a bit funny in those things. I think you looked nice in the tablecloth, and it wasn't your fault, and you were awfully brave about it. And wasn't it fun, the desert island bit? I did enjoy it. We'll play a game like that again soon, won't we? Good night, William darling," said Joan. "Good night." William hung up the receiver and went upstairs to bed. He held his untidy, carroty head erect. On his freckled face was a softened expression, nearly as good as a smile. He wore his tablecloth almost with a jaunty air. He was himself again. The end. And it actually says the end because it's the end of the book. There you go. I knew they'd go out with a bang on that book. Sorry, I don't know why my throat is so tickly today. But you need to make sure that you're having something to drink too. Anyway, so the aside was the fact that I had put a command into my chat box over here, which it showed me what was meant to be going on stream. And then when I was looking at OBS overlay in front of me, the thing that I use to control a whole lot of stuff, it didn't show me that command in the chat box. And I thought that was actually what everybody gets to see. Apparently it's not. So because I didn't see it, I wrote the other version of it. So one was hi for the command and the other one was welcome, which both say the same thing because one's an alias for the other. And now that I'm actually looking over on a different page, it appears that it did give you that. Or did it? I can't tell. So if you're still here listening and you were here when I wrote it, how about you just type into the chat box and tell me if for you could see a little bit of text in a second section after I wrote either hi or welcome. And then I'll know, because it'll help me with troubleshooting if there is actually a problem with what's going on my channel. I don't know. I haven't a clue. Some things are just a bit beyond me, in case you hadn't noticed. According to my phone, it worked. But according to some of the things I'm looking at on my computer, it didn't. I don't know. It's so confusing. Anyway, so we've finished the story. It's after 4 o'clock. I won't be starting a new book today anyway because it's a bit too late for that. And I was thinking that what we could have next is the third book in the, not the Bastable Children, the other ones, the Samoyed series. We had 5 children in it, and then we had the Phoenix and the Carpet, and there's a third book in the series called The Amulet, and I have that, and it's public domain, so I'm going to be able to read it to you, and I think that would be a fun one to read next. Another one written by the author who wrote The Railway Children, and the Bastable ones with the would-be goods and the treasure seekers and all that sort of stuff. So that should be a bit of fun. And that'll give us some time to think about what else we are going to have as a story. So if you've got any suggestions for other stories that we can read, ones that you think would be quite fun to include in what we do here, while I'm still here chatting, you can write it in the chat box. That's cool. I can catch that. But otherwise, once I'm gone here, I won't get to see it because once chat is gone, if I go away and then come back a bit later on, it's not going to show it to me. It doesn't do that. That's not the way the system works. It's not like comments on YouTube. But if you want to leave a message for me with suggestions about books that you'd like to possibly have read, then go to my Discord server and type them in there. And I'm going to see if this command works. Oh, I need to actually put that in the... Sorry, that was a really weird response. I need to put the mouse clicky thing in the text box for all time. Yeah, that apparently worked. There's the link for the Discord server. Come and chat with us on Discord once we're offline here. Very quiet, great for adding book suggestions, pictures of places we hear about, etc. So yes, you're welcome to join. There will be a little wee, you have to agree to the rules of the server thing. It's a little bit like old-fashioned bulletin boards in a lot of ways, Discord, if you haven't used it before. Twitch, YouTube and Discord are all services that you can use for free. Yes, there are options for doing a paid version of them, but you can use so many aspects of all of those services without having to do a paid version. So please come and join us on Discord if you would like to listen to some more old-fashioned stories that I have read to you that you missed out on before. Then the other place to go is to my YouTube channel, because I put playlists up there with all of the videos from the different books that I've read, and each playlist is a whole book, except for two. Two of them, one of them is every story that that particular author wrote, because they're little short stories, and so I put all of the books together into one playlist. And then the other one is two books that, because I went from reading one book and then immediately started reading the next book all in one video, I basically just left that as one whole playlist for the two books, and that was the Alice in Wonderland and Through the Looking Glass one. So come and join us on YouTube. You can leave comments there about the different videos that you've been watching. You can make suggestions there if you're a YouTube person, if you don't want to join Discord. But if you're into tech and you want to chat with other people, come and join us on Discord. Don't forget to follow on Twitch, subscribe on YouTube. That way both of those services will let you know when I go live. And you'll also find me on other places on the internet too, like Twitter and Instagram, and I'm not even going to bother typing those links. Both YouTube and Discord and Twitch actually have those links in my About Me section. So look forward to seeing you again next time. Thank you for being here and chatting with me, and thank you for Goriki doing a little bit of modding for me when it's needed. Goriki is another one of the readers from the Codex group of readers who read public domain books. He doesn't read all year round. He reads when it's public holidays, the big holidays in summer and winter, because the work he does means that he has to look after his voice for the rest of the time. So reading time is in big holidays, and otherwise he streams with games and chat, and various other things like that. So anyway, thank you, Goriki. Look forward to seeing your streams too. Another thing you can do once I've finished reading here is, if you're not after a specifically child-friendly stream, then look through the links that I have below for the Codex group of readers and find one that's actually live at the moment. I don't know who's live at the moment. Sorry, I'm not I'm not strong enough yet on time zones for who's where, but go find somebody else to listen to who likes reading or chatting or whatever. Be part of the community of people who like interacting with each other online. So thank you for being here. Thank you for joining in, and I look forward to seeing you next time. In the meantime, happy reading. Bye.